Hello and welcome to the Longbox, a month in comics. I'm Dan Simpson.
Doug Hawkins.
On with episode 3. Right, going to start off by just mentioning a few little pieces of housekeeping. You'll be able to find, along with this episode, links for our YouTube channel, which is just going to be a still image. It's just an easier way of streaming them via the website we've got at the moment. And also our Twitter feed, which will drop in the same information more or less as the Facebook.
It's essentially me just geeking out. Any bit of news I just forward and try to spark conversation. Sometimes does, sometimes doesn't.
Good. Okay, so what have we got on the agenda this week?
Well, first of all, I just want to do up on the top of the head that it's going to be the first episode that we're going to actually have a guest on. Later on, we've got some massive news to do. We're going to do a lot of news, and a piece of that news, I had my jaw in my lap. I was like, they're completely left field. It was the last thing I thought would happen when it comes to comic books. So to school us, we've got Lydia on to give us a bit of information about that.
I'm not going to pretend otherwise. She's my long-suffering partner.
Yeah.
And she is currently reading the Captain Marvel comic book, so she's going to take us to school on that a little bit.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, we'll do the book club part of it, as we like to call.
Cool. Yeah.
Straight up, we'll just jump straight into it like we did last issue. Batman 35.
Yes.
Subtitle: Endgame.
Endgame Part 1.
Did you enjoy?
Immensely. I took some time to get around to reading it, largely because you were bigging it up so much and I wanted to make you wait before we could talk about it
every week.
Absolutely fantastic.
You read it? Just wanted to let you know, this is for the audience rather than you, because you know. Last issue I was talking as if this was that issue 35 was going to be conclusion of Future's End, the issue we talked that was set in the future. I got that wrong. It is set after Eternal, so it's not quite. It is Batman in the future, but so little in the future it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
It just means that the events of what will eventually happen in Eternal has ended, and this is the sequel essentially.
Yeah. I mean, it effectively means Batman remains still out of sync with the rest of the DCU. This is the first time he'll have been back in sync, because
I believe. Well, my understanding is, I feel that this has to be in sync. Yeah, I'm going to sound naive, so if I say that this does affect the other Justice League characters, I don't think it does. So this could be anywhere. I think that Eternal is in sync. This is slightly out, but we're talking. Depending on your view on how long Eternal takes, it's probably only a week. So it's in sync with the DC unit as much as it needs to be.
It has to be. We've got Justice League showing up.
Yeah, I mean the front cover is just Batman thrown down with the Justice League,
which is.
I remember when I saw that cover.
It's not lying. Like, it gives us a play-by-play of his fight with some of the biggest hitters out.
Right. Again, we're trying to be kind of fuck it. We ain't going to be that spoiler. Well, actually, spoilers galore on this one, because
I think we're possibly just going to walk you through the comic.
Yeah, page by page. So. I mean, so it starts with kind of, well, we won't go, the theatre bit I'll bring up. It has an epilogue at the beginning regarding a theatre, which is really nicely frames the story. I don't think Snyder's particularly good when it comes to the 25-page format. He doesn't seem to be able to get it done in those 20. He kind of throws up a little bit of if he's doing a 6-issue story, kind of throws up a little bit of and this is the end of this comic, but it doesn't really feel complete as a framed story.
Yeah, he's always writing a graphic novel and having to cut it up.
That's the best way of describing it. Yeah. Well, this one is bookended really nice with this kind of nice mention of the Gotham theatre. So essentially the idea, it's just the way it kicks off. So we're in the theatre, and he mentions about that's being built, kind of talking about the gods. So that's what it's about, isn't it? Like he
set some themes down early on.
Yeah, essentially.
So a lot of comic book writers would have done that in a panel.
Yeah,
rather than 3 pages.
3 pages, yeah. But essentially, he's talking about how much it costs to rebuild the Gotham theatre, and the reason is because there's a belt or some sort of lowering device to lower actors down onto the stage.
Yeah, because the first play they're doing concludes with a god of some Roman or Egyptian, I can't remember now, lowering themselves onto the into the midst of mortals. I see where they're going with this.
Yeah.
And Bruce Wayne, who's funding this venture, decides yes, that is a reasonable use of money, because as they lay out in that opening bit of spiel, that's what people need
Yeah,
these
they
days.
need a god. Yeah,
They want gods walking around with their mortals.
Then we cut to Gotham, cut to a news report, don't we? And there's this gas has been released in the centre of Gotham.
Yeah, big old gas cloud right in the middle of Gotham.
And it's circular shaped, almost arena shaped, hint, as they
mention.
Yes. Turns out that this gas is actually harmless.
Yeah, it's inert. It's just sort of clearing people out.
Yeah, so they think it's a terrorist attack.
We're only a few years on from 0 year. People are worried.
Yeah. So they think it's a terrorist attack. Everyone evacuates. In fact, it's not at all. What happens is Dan just turned the page and he's just bit his fist. He's so excited. Essentially, Batman has released the gas, and he's obviously wanted to clear the streets as he's walking around in this massive fucking batsuit. This is the bit that kind of ground on me that you and I disagree with. Think Hulkbuster, kids. That's what it looks like. It looks like the Bat version of Hulk.
Okay, yes, it looks like that. But to me, what jumped out at me is like, you know that thing he uses to fight Superman?
Yeah.
Imagine if he, upgraded that by
it's
several
like 4
thousand
times
years
as
worth
big.
of tech.
Yeah,
but big old bat spikes on it. Like, it just looks incredible.
Now, instead of going through frame by frame, essentially what we have going on here is the Justice League is trying to kill Batman. He figures that out pretty quickly, jumps in his suit, evacuates Gotham so he can fight the Justice League in Gotham. Batman's prepared for this, and this suit is tailor-made to fight the Justice League.
Mm-hmm.
Are you happy with the kind of little tricks of the trade that?
Yes, particularly as it's some we haven't seen before. There's one that ground on me. We'll get to it.
Yeah,
because I think you know what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, number one. First one to try and take out the bat. Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
It must be fucked, surely, right?
Oh yeah, of course. How Wonder Woman kill Batman?
And I can't remember the specifics of it, and I'm not gonna try and find it in the comic now. But basically, when the lasso of truth was made, whoever it was making, whatever god was making that, they're like, this is quite powerful. I need to create an antithesis for it. And so they basically got, what do they call it? The rope of lies or something like that.
Yeah.
Something that Batman has managed to track down and uses to trick Wonder Woman into thinking she's defeated him.
I like the idea. If I remember, it was like he tracked it down on the magical black market, which I love that idea. Like
there is one.
Yeah. Like that's a comic book series in its own. Just like trading in the magical black market. So yeah, basically he leaves Wonder Woman for dust, imagining that she's
which
killing.
Does mean that we get to see how it's playing out
in her head,
which is incredible.
You get to see him cut up Batman, and she just leaves her in the corner, just in her own imagination, killing Batman. Next up is the Flash. We get the fight. Barry Allen comes after him. It's a bit simple. We're gonna make it sound like a Roadrunner cartoon here. Basically, he sprays some frictionless kind of stuff on the floor, slip and slide. It's a little bit more high tech than that.
It's laser guided. It's basically he's got he's thrown a batarang, which is there to like track the Flash.
Yeah, it's so fast it can track. It can track the Flash.
And it picks the right moment to squirt this super lube on the floor and deck the Flash. And if Flash loses his footing,
he's fucked.
Yeah,
he isn't superhuman. He's run really fast.
He's a bit superhuman, but he just goes careering off into a wall. It's like boom, Flash done with. Had to be quick, I suppose. It's the only way it could have gone down.
And to be fair, 25 pages, and we've got to get through a few versions of Justice League. Yeah.
And to be fair, he's managing to pile some serious exposition onto that.
Yeah.
He walks you through every step of the way.
Batman comics in general, I'm gonna probably salute this to Frank Miller for doing it the first in year 1 and The Dark Knight Returns. But it always feels like you're getting twice as much, because not only are you getting dialogue, you're getting his internal monologue. And that means you can get so much information in the panel of comics, and so you get so much in this comic with them fighting the Justice League.
Yeah.
Who's up next then?
Next is Aquaman.
Yeah.
And this is the one that bugged me a little, and fair enough. Because we don't get the whole Justice League here. I'm pleased he was one of the ones that they decided to show anyway. And while he's got people arriving, he's talking through in his head his contingency plans for everyone, so we get to get an idea of what he would have done for everyone. Cyborg, Green Lantern, everyone. Aquaman, evidently quite an easy supervillain to take down if you're Batman. He basically wraps him in chewing gum.
If I remember, it was powdered magnesium, wasn't it? It's some sort of foam, which
whatever, it's pink.
Why pink? Is that just a...
That's a colourist's choice, I guess.
Yeah, okay. To make it look bubblegum. But the idea of this magnesium foam is it's got so many pores in it it just dries out. It just absorbs all
so
the moisture.
it sticks him down and it dries him out, which stops him. It weakens him basically, and he's done quicker than the Flash.
Yeah. Now we're coming to the end of the comic. We are burning through this comic quite quickly. It isn't like this, guys. You should read it. It's amazing watching him just fucking go at it with the Justice League. It's one of my favourite comics I've read in a while. Like Dan says, he takes down Arthur, and then he starts listing who's next. If it's Green Lantern, I'll do this. If it's Cyborg, I do this.
And he's like, just don't let it be him.
Yeah, just don't let it be him. And true to form, Man of Steel fucking punches him through the theatre.
That's what brings it right back to that beginning moment. And I think
he
looks like he wrecks up. Yeah, it does. It wrecks up the that device we were talking about for lowering an act onto the stage.
But then, like the act would, Superman descends onto the stage with some, with a nice little mention, kind of mirroring of the idea of the actors doing that. Now, we're going to do the last panel. We're not going to bury leaving this because it's the cat's out of the bag when it comes to the ending of this comic and why the Justice League are trying to kill him. As we see a close up on Superman.
Just want to say before we do your version of this, 99% of comic book fans are going to be over the moon with this. But Doug has got just a little bit of a bug up his arse about one particular supervillain.
Yes, I mean, I think I've mentioned it before. When I read this last panel, I had to get talked off the ledge by a few people because I was like, "Fuck this!" But Snyder released a really big interview about it. That's why I feel okay to release it now because it's out there. And he kind of turned me around as well, listening to him say. Essentially, we see Superman come down and he has a rictus grin on his face.
And as we cut around the other defeated heroes, they're beginning to laugh.
Yes, and it's very evident that the Joker is back in Gotham, people, and managed to take down the Justice League. Now, like you said, everyone's like, "Yay, the Joker, the greatest villain of all time." Yeah. My biggest problem is that's the answer to everything in fucking Batman at the moment. It's because of the games. Is my biggest problem. The Arkham games, absolutely fantastic, but every villain, the big boss is always the Joker. The Joker is always behind everything.
No matter who has been. It turns out it was the Joker.
Yeah, and it just frustrates me. And we just had Death of the Family, absolutely fantastic Joker story. They took him out of the New 52 for about a year before that happened, and I just felt like that gave that character rest. I thought, right, okay, we can go a long time now without seeing that character, and now the Joker's back again. It's almost like you got this rich, the what do you call it? The rogues gallery is so big. Why do we have to keep going back to the Joker? Which is kind of my biggest.
You kind of got your answer to that from the interview, though.
Yes, this is this is where I got talked off the ledge, where Snyder mentions the fact that this is actually his conclusion to his Death of the Family. So that was part one. And
Joker wasn't defeated in that story. He just was a tactical retreat.
So if I look at this this Endgame as the conclusion of that, and it's one big story, I'm happy. I'm happy that we'll get. But I will say, I think this is going to be 6 issues long. I hope we then.
Have we dealt with the Joker for a while after that?
I hope so. I hope we can then.
Let's get him locked up in Arkham, and then
leave him there.
Just maybe visit him occasionally. But that's I'm with you to an extent. I'm kind of losing my my love for the it was the Joker.
Even with Gotham, it almost feels like I know that they are staying away for them, and that shows that you can. There's plenty going on in the Batman U that you can stay away from the Joker, but even then they had to advertise that program as and maybe the Joker, and dropping a lot of Joker Easter eggs and things.
They're teasing it.
Yeah.
But I don't think it'll go that way, and I do just want to mention as an absolute final panel that final panel Doug was talking about. Possibly one of my favourite things Capullo has ever drawn is Super Joker.
It's just that smile is amazing.
Yeah, and it's not he's not got the Joker smile as such. It's it's not cut into his face. He doesn't look ridiculous. He still looks like Superman. But he's got these glossed over eyes, the kiss curls gone kind of wavy.
Yeah,
and it's just this.
Seeing the man
grin.
still looks
looks so manic.
Yeah, especially as you know what he can do and the power that you
Yeah.
know he has. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an incredible image. Not the end of the comic though.
No, I was going to talk to that about Snyder likes to do kind of what we're going to call it the sub story.
We always call it PSs.
Yeah, the PSs. Yeah, this PS was interesting. It was it kind of because we don't get to see the Joker in this issue. We just kind of get that nod. So you know, we kind of like how would you describe this second story?
It's okay. So the Joker's back. So we want to drum up a little bit more Joker lore. You know, a little bit more. Oh, isn't the Joker a legend? As we've discussed, we think possibly there's enough of that out there at the moment. But this is just a story not featuring the Joker, but just showing the Joker's impact on Gotham.
Yeah, and essentially what we got going on is a bunch of people has escaped from Arkham Asylum, and they're obsessed with the Joker, and they kidnap a
doctor from Arkham,
or an orderly of some sort, and is telling them. Essentially, I think we're going to get a PS for every one of the issue, and the PS is going to be a story told by one of these insane inmates on how they met the Joker. Mm-hmm. And the first one was very interesting. I loved it. He essentially was talking to the orderly and said, I met the Joker 20 years ago, and the orderly corrects him and said, well, the Joker's only been operating for 6 or 7 years. He's like, no, before that, you know, before he was human. It's like, what do you mean human? He wants you to think that he's the Joker. In fact, he's the devil himself.
Yeah.
And we have this very eerie story told. It's absolutely drawn, where the guy says, I was walking down the woods, a path that it was never there before and never will be there again, and I saw him. And we get this kind of Pan's Labyrinth kind of like
that exact comparison,
or Alien type thing, where like the Joker grows from the ground and he's not human. And he got his snout. It was fantastic to see. I mean, because it's in fantasy, you can have the Joker looking like that, but another version of that character.
Yeah, I mean, what I thought was interesting is that the orderly or the psychiatrist, whatever she is, brings up the fact that that guy has told that story 100 times. There's never been the Joker before. It's like he's met or heard about the Joker, and the Joker has infiltrated that story in some way. They've all become so obsessed by the Joker. He is so the king of the crazy people that they have taken their own insanity and incorporated him into it.
Yeah. And so, are you happy with these kind of what do you call PSs? Because, like I said, it sounds like this format is like for the 6 issues we're going to get 6 Joker stories.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way. And you can never make your mind up from one. But what I do remember is the Harper stories from the end of some of Snyder's earlier Batman stuff, and how those were like, oh, what's this about at first? But then it built in something absolutely fantastic, and then became incorporated into the story later on. So yeah, I'm really happy with
my only thing about it is I do love this idea of like the mysterious Joker and the fact that it's been walked by these insane people so much. It's endearing at the moment because we've only just seen the rictus grin on Superman. I think when he gets deeper and deeper into the character, I don't know if I'm going to be... I'll be seeing the Joker of flesh and blood, so I don't really care. Don't know if I'll care for that so much.
Fair enough. Okay, so keeping in DC,
yeah,
I'm going to move on to, you lucky people, 2 Aquaman and the Others stories. The first being the Future's End, issue 1, one shot, which is actually the conclusion to the Aquaman Future's End I discussed last month.
I think our fans are on the edge of their seats waiting.
Yeah, I can't wait to find out how this concludes.
Yeah.
Right, so basically, off-screen Aquaman lost the fight.
Okay.
And we open up this comic and he's captured. Dead King is waging war on dry land.
It sounds like the first time we ever see a battle in Game of Thrones. It's like you get to see Tyrion like suit up, and then it's just like
just get beamed.
Yeah. You see nothing. You just see the fight start and the fight end. Like,
it felt like that too a little bit, but it had a lot to do. So Dead King's waging war on dry land, which is where we get the others involved. They're looking for Arthur. They're on a boat.
Yeah.
They find the Dead King and his army. Clearly, I need to because I'm behind on my actual Aquaman Central run.
Right.
There's definitely some stuff.
Because you're doing that by volume, aren't you?
That's correct. Yeah. And so evidently the Dead King got beaten at some point. His scepter got melted, and he's got some other Atlantean spear. It's not the one he used to like sink islands.
Okay.
Evidently that gets lost somewhere along the way. So I gave myself a bit of a spoiler there.
Okay.
But yeah, so he basically the majority of it is the Atlantean army headed by Mera and the Dead King, Atlan, taking out Aquaman's on island base that I was talking about last time that he's got set up.
His on land kind of. Were you saying he did it for politics?
It was it's political reasons, and I think it still makes sense that's the reason. Like Arthur's his way of getting, because it sounds like it was a war with so it was the war with Darkseid that's caused all of this, and has screwed over Mira's people, and their homelands are uninhabitable and the oceans are damaged, and so they just the Mira and King Atlan both are very much Atlantis for the Atlanteans and underwater folk for the underwater folk at least. To hell with these air breathers,
right?
And they're continuing that war. Meanwhile, Arthur's locked up and uses a little bit of his to summon a big ass whale to bust through the wall and break him out.
Is it done well?
It is done pretty well. It's only in a couple of panels, but I could read a whole comic of that.
Yeah,
that's the stuff I love. So he then returns to join the fray while the others are fighting off King Atlan. Meanwhile, the Infiltrator's grandson, Infiltrator being one of the others, Marcus, I think his name is.
Yeah.
He's just there. He just happened to be knocking around. He's a researcher. He does get involved in the Aquaman and the others story. That's not 5 years in the future, but he's always just kind of he's what's quite nice is that he's the Infiltrator's assistant.
Right.
The Infiltrator is his granddad.
Right.
And yet he is the Alfred the butler.
Yeah. Okay.
So he's there just kind of trying to stay out of trouble, and King Atlan is trying to reclaim all his Atlantean artifacts from the others. So we've got the bracers, we've got a key, which is what the Infiltrator uses to unlock any lock and break any code. The guy called the Prisoner, who really interestingly in this issue, because his power before he got the bracers, the gauntlets even, or I think they're manacles technically, is that anyone who dies around him, he kind of carries them around as a soul and can use their abilities and skills.
Oh, okay.
And he's got this thing of dog tags, and basically they stay around. So if he's got a medic that died with him,
he's now a medic.
He can be a medic, or a sniper, or
and what's his character called?
The Prisoner.
That's awesome.
I really want him to have his own comic. I don't know whether he did before. He's really interesting. And during the war that we haven't seen during this 5 years, loads of people have died around him, and so he's got this massive chunky necklace of dog tags now.
So we've gone from in the main continuity of Aquaman and the others, he's got a few skills. Yeah. 5 years in the future, he's fucking badass. He's collected all these.
Absolutely, he's let a few go because his personal mission is to go and see the families of all these people, and that's how he lays them to rest. And so he's kind of haunted by them.
This is a really good character.
I wish I had a comic of him to read and to go through, but. At the moment he's
that's
kind of
so rich.
sidelined.
That's almost like, I don't know, Constantine or something like that. Where it's kind of dealing with these souls. And
that's got legs as a TV show.
It's got a show by show format. I've got a dog tag and I've got to take it.
Yeah.
Collect some, give some away.
Alright.
Okay, sorry.
Up on one there. So we've also got the little globe thing that allows you to teleport around. The Seal of Clarity, which allows you to see the future.
Okay.
And he's collecting them all. And also there's this shield that I can't remember his name again, but I'm going to remind myself because I talked about him last time. It's Volko, just found it in the comic. He's the one who dug out the shield to resurrect the dead king.
Right,
so there's now quite a lot of these artifacts knocking around. And King Atlan is just knocking them off of people when he can, knocking the helmet off the guy's head, helmet that allows you to exist in any environment, which I guess was an important one when his plan was to sink his island.
Mm-hmm.
So it's together obviously incredibly powerful being. Gradually, as these things are being knocked off of people, they're being picked up by Marcus,
right.
And he basically comes out kitted up with every single Atlantean artifact, barring Aquaman's actual trident, and uses it to defeat King Atlan.
So he looks like a Power Ranger Zord then.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it seems like they're going to really skew the direction this goes in, because now all the others don't have their artifacts, and they're alright with it that he's got them all. And the closing line is something like, where once there was the others, now we have the other, and it's like introducing him as a new character. Like I speculated in last month that we might end up with a new other who's just got the shield, but it seems like we're just introducing a whole new character with all these Atlantean goodies.
Okay, just a little bit of spill on this. this was the biggest problem about the Future's End stuff. Is fans were saying to sort of Jim Lee and Didio were talking in an interview regarding this, and like, does this mean this is where we're going? Then we've only got 5 years, and this is the reality we're going to have to deal with. And they were very maybe. I think with the actual run called Future's End, where we deal with McGuinness and things like that, and I know that there's something else on the horizon. The DCU is going to take such a skew that this is going to end up being just another reality that will never get touched on. Cool. So it means you could end your stories like that, and no one has to deal with the consequences. So we ain't seeing fucking Batman's clone. We ain't, these are the way we were speculating last episode about like what does this mean to the future of the DCU. We don't have to worry about that. I think that Future's End is going to end with a multiverse type split.
Right. Okay.
That means that these stories will then become irrelevant.
Yeah.
So they're a little bit of fun, guys, but unfortunately,
that probably is the last we'll see of the other.
Yes.
It kind of tells the story of like maybe that is the a last ever story for the others.
Yeah.
But we're never necessarily going to get there. Random comparison is a bit like the dream sequence episode of the Batman animated series with Over the Edge.
Yeah.
Like they're telling a last Batman story, but don't worry, it's not really.
Yeah, we're not getting that. Yeah.
Cool. So the actual issue 6, Aquaman and the Others, was a little bit more. Remember that we were talking about that issue of Guardians where kind of we just had a big mission, now everyone's kind of back together and then we're going to go off and do our own things a little bit.
Yeah.
We've just finished a mission. We just had we took out Legend.
Right. Okay.
And so now this is clearly just a way to set up the next thing. Right where at the beginning of so issue 1 of Aquaman and the Others, we showed the others all on their own missions. We've got the prisoner doing it, is going around dropping off Soul's bit. We've got Infiltrator was stealing some important data stick which he never got to drop off.
So it's concluding their stories.
It's concluding their stories, and as they go off to do that, it turns out there's some vague connection between them. There's this the guy who sent Infiltrator off to get the data stick then turns on him, and I can't remember how it's connected to all of them, but basically just gradually panel by panel it shows that something else is going down, some other villain is in play.
Right.
We don't see who it is, but we do see the bottom half of them, and they appear to be wearing a lime green miniskirt.
Right.
But the most ridiculous thing in this comic, and the thing we're probably going to spend the most time talking about, is the Infiltrator's villain that shows up. The Infiltrator wears a blue onesie. He's basically just a CIA type spy.
Right.
An old friend of his shows up, an enemy, wearing a similar costume but with red highlights, called the KG Beast.
Really?
Yeah. He is, I don't know what else to describe him as, other than he's a slightly more muscly version of the Infiltrator, with a gun for an arm.
I think we're going to have a lot of like weird name drops. This will be a trilogy. So we got the KG Beast. We didn't mention it when I mentioned Batman's suit earlier on. The League Buster costume. Superman refers to it as the League Buster, which I don't like because it is literally like, hey, Marvel's just dropped that trailer of the Hulk Buster. So that's just, I know it kind of nick. You were okay with it?
Yeah, well, just because I didn't read it in that way.
No,
just like it was a kind of just a kooky nickname for, because it's exactly what it was. He built a suit to tackle the League.
And then the worst name, as we said, it comes in threes. The worst one is the next comic we're going to talk about, Guardians of the Galaxy, that bring up the Revengers.
Yeah, okay. Differing opinions on this.
Yeah.
So I'll let you take the lead.
Okay, so I didn't like this issue of Guardians of the Galaxy. It's issue 19. We're still in the Cancerverse. If you remember last month, we were interrogating Quill to find out what happened to the...
We're still in that format. That's still framing it.
Yeah.
We've still got Gamora grilling him, tied to a chair, and he's giving us this story.
How did he survive the Cancerverse, and why is Thanos not dead? Essentially, is what we're what's going on here. But this comic, I mean, we praised last month because it was like, this is fresh and different. It's drawn really well. I'm not too happy. I mean, the drawing's still the same. It's still the same artwork. Still as dynamic and colourful. I just like it's 25 pages of just and fighting.
Well, it is that. No, I don't disagree because it is that. But I think they introduced some really fun concepts in here, and it's very entertaining. There's some really funny moments which we'll get to.
Essentially, what happens is this is in the Cancerverse. So as we established last issue, we got Nova, we've got Drax, and we've got Peter Quill, and they're throwing down with Thanos. which is great because I saw it happen a lot last issue. Don't think I need to see that again. But what's happening in the Cancerverse is they're throwing down, and they establish that they can't kill each other. So you take a fatal blow to someone, fry them or whatever using the cube, and you just appear somewhere else. Like the Cancerverse will not let you.
But I mean, the way we say it, we don't learn it quite like that. It's not someone just sat there telling you. Like the epic fight continues that we started in the last issue. A ridiculous Hadouken blast from the Tesseract in the hands of Peter Quill
Apparently
incinerates Thanos. We see a burning skeleton of Thanos, and they're standing around patting each other on the back, and then blam, turn the page, and a big purple fist erupts from Peter Quill's chest,
and we have no idea why. Is that what kills him? Yeah, and then he dies from that eruption, and then it appears. Okay.
And immediately afterwards, Quill's got a fist sticking out of his chest. Now Thanos has got some fleshy quill hanging off his arm, and Drax shoves the Tesseract in Thanos' skull, and he explodes again. And so they all stood standing around, same as we were, going, "What the hell is going on here?
Twins here? Yeah, what's going on?" And then it's established that you just can't die. It's like playing a Lego game.
Or any video game.
Yeah.
You respawn. It gives us a really cute moment, which I do want to mention, because not often you laugh out loud reading a comic. And so Thanos is stood there sullenly discussing this shit with them because they realise there's no point in them fighting. And Drax rocks up to him and asks, "Does it hurt?" And Thanos is like, "Does what hurt?" So when you die here, does it hurt? And he goes, "Yeah." And Drax shoves it in his face again and annihilates him again. And they hear just this distant moan as he resurrects, sort of written, just all consonants. And I just think that's hilarious. That's spot on for the tone of Guardians.
Quill is like, that's pretty funny.
That's really
so this sounds pretty relentless from what we've seen. What happens on the next page though? Like halfway through the comic, they find some visitors. So just to set the tone, like anyone who's seen the Guardians of the Galaxy film. You see, and it's done quite well in the comics as well, but you always see Thanos on his throne. You see it in Avengers as well as Guardians of the Galaxy, in this kind of like no atmosphere style moon is the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
Like it's got gravity.
It's got like floating Pandora rocks, but no atmosphere.
Yeah, no atmosphere is the best way. It looks like they're just sat on a rock in space. Picture that for the Cancerverse is the best way to describe the Cancerverse as well, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's just a desolate spaceland, like being on the moon. So these guys are fighting, and then they're interrupted by, like I didn't bury the lead on this one, the Revengers, which are the Avengers, but
they are bizarro Avengers. They're evil versions with red eyes and slightly different logos of the Avengers that we all know and love. Some of them. Peculiarly, we've got Miss Marvel in the lineup. Fair enough. She's not this Miss Marvel. Before she became Bizarro Miss Marvel, hadn't caught up with the reboot because she's the blonde booby one from the before Marvel Now. Whereas this is part of the Marvel Now series, which I found interesting.
Okay, yeah. You made that comparison to Bizarro. The thing about Bizarro is we get an explanation. Like I have no idea who these characters are, what they're doing. It's just like, evil.
So the hang-up for you is that we're in a universe of nothingness.
Yeah, but we have a version of Tony Stark, or like I assume what happened is their version of Captain America. They also had a Second World War that he was a mascot for and was frozen in time. Even though there's nothing in this universe, don't understand.
I didn't see it quite that way. And in the comics' defense, Peter Quill in his little interrogation with Gamora has that conversation. He's like, is there an evil me walking around in this place? He's wondering as much as we are. My take on it is that as soon as something exists here, it is possible for a Cancerverse version of it to just pop into existence.
So they are literally a mirror image.
It's a mirror universe.
Yeah, okay.
And so there doesn't need to be Starbucks and roads and infrastructure. Just anything significant that exists can have an evil version. And again, in the events of the comic, we cut back to Gamora going, "Revengers, are you shitting me? I'm not listening to you anymore."
Yeah.
And she walks away.
I almost put the comic down when I was like, it's a striking pose seeing like evil, the evil Avengers, like the.
Is that evil Ant-Man as well?
Oh, I like Stark. the Iron Man costume looks awesome.
Yeah, it's got this creepy
Like
beak of a face.
yeah. I mean, it's just.
And then Evil Thor, not looking too different. His eyes are red, but he looks pretty intimidating as it is.
Yeah.
Captain America's got a pentagram instead of his traditional A, including on his shield, which is the old school kite shield. Except for later in the comic when it's round again.
For some reason, yeah. Then the rest of the comic is again just go into relentless throwing down, and it's the way he tells Gamora the story, because it has these like voiceover as we see in the panel. It's like they fight for days. I mean,
they keep dying and coming back.
It's just like,
and
I'm exhausted.
What a brilliant vision of hell.
Yeah,
like, they
reading this comic. Yeah.
No. I mean, okay, so if we assume the Cancerverse is supposed to be exactly that, some version of hell, it's a place where you can't die, but you are perpetually tormented.
Yeah. There's no motive for these Revengers. I don't know why they started fighting them, what they want. I mean,
really gave the artist something to do there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I bet it's one of those things. A little bit like Capullo. He's like, I get to draw the fucking Justice League. It's the same thing. Like, I get to draw badass Avengers. But they just fight and fight and fight. I just feel like this, and the story ends with the cliffhanger as the Revengers get hold of the 18 pages later. They get hold of the Tesseract.
Yeah, there's a lot of fighting.
Yeah.
Is that Evil Venom?
Yeah. That looks like that's what that could be. No, Evil Spider-Man, I'd say, with the superior
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
He's got the
superior Spider-Man arms.
We get Thanos loving it as well. Like, he says it takes him like a few hours of their fight to realise Thanos is fighting on their side, and Thanos is he's being Thanos the Titan. He's just absolutely loving it, just throwing down with everyone, and like the Avengers, the Revengers aren't holding back, and so like they're trying to crush him into the dirt, and he's like, we got giant. Is it Ant-Man?
Even though they're fighting for days. No, I think it's Goliath or something like that. It might be Ant-Man
because the Bizarro version might get big.
Yeah.
Whatever. Some giant creature just trying to slam him into the dirt, and Thanos just crawling out of his hand after punching his way through.
I just like, it makes no sense. They know that they can't kill each other. This is futile, fighting for days. Like,
well, they're fighting because they're fighting to keep the Tesseract.
Okay, so it's a game. It's a massive game of American football.
They would just they would just lay down and die, because there's no point in them fighting. That they need to keep their hands on the Tesseract to make it end at all. So I think, all right, a little bit exhausting, but I think it's a well motivated fight.
The
shields around.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. So like I said, it ends with the evil Cap with his with the Tesseract. They win the fight. I think the guy's tire or whatever. I don't think I'm going to pick up this comic again.
Really? Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to stick with it.
I'm going to stop at 18.
I want to see what the Revengers are. I can't see it. Okay, I confess they're stupid.
Yeah.
But I want to see how they get out of the Cancerverse. I'm loving this artwork. It's an interesting setup at the moment, and it's still set in the here and now. This is all a flashback. We've still got everything that just happened. We've still got Gamora and Peter Quill on some planet somewhere with him tied to a chair, and that's going to go somewhere.
It's a great comparison. It's great. This has happened both this month. If you compare this to Batman fighting the evil Justice League, like the substance in there compared to this, which is just fight after fight after. Like, there's a better way of telling that story. Perhaps Peter Quill is clever with each. We get to see him, go around the fight moving.
Yeah, but it's it's a Marvel thing to have these big splash pages of one man, in case we get 2-page spread at one point of the fight just continuing, and it's one of those things where you try to get every single character on the page doing something, fighting off some character or other, and it's just this big illogical melee. Whereas I think DC is better at
storytelling.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, and that's where it boils down to it. Like, there's always that thing, as being a comic book fan, that stigma of comic books are for kids. Now, if someone picked up this issue and read it, I don't think I could defend that.
Never gets his arm cut off at one point.
Okay, the storytelling. I just don't. I don't think I can defend it. It's very two-dimensional, very flat, and very cool, blah, blah, with no more substance than that. Like, when talking about comic books, people were like, "No, read The Dark Knight Returns" and things like that. I just feel like maybe it's Marvel in general just aren't up to that.
Maybe it's Marvel now.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like as we heard And when we were speaking last week, a lot of the Marvel Now stuff is pretty flat.
Yeah.
They're just trying to get a story done that you can pick up and read one a week, and you don't have to.
Now that's the thing. We're using the phrase "flat." It's a negative. We didn't use the word light or accessible. We said flat because that's what they are. I think like we could be nice about it and be like, oh yeah, they're light and fluffy and. You know,
It could just be that we're picking up the wrong Marvel.
Yeah.
The Guardian story is arguably more directed at kids. I don't think there's any problem with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with the tone of this. Yes, someone gets their arm cut off. It's always done in a very comic booky way, and I think that's fine. I mean, we're both Marvel fans. We've both read some of the Marvel greats.
I mean, it was interesting what you said about I mean, okay, that's a good point. Yeah, I'm attacking Marvel, but you know, if you read Civil War, if you read Fear Itself especially, that can.
I do prefer Civil War over Fear Itself.
Do you? I'm the other way around. I think Fear Itself. I always feel like Fear Itself is the Marvel's answer to Brightest Day.
Yeah.
I just think
It's got that
depth to it.
Yeah, depth. Yeah.
And it's because they deal with Odin a lot and they go down that route. That's probably why I compare it where Civil War is more kind of grounded, that's all. Yeah, so it was interesting what you said about the idea of like maybe we're reading the wrong ones. Because I was so enraged with Guardians, I was like, I'm not going to read it anymore. I'm going to go and find another comic to collect rather than the Guardians. So I wanted to make it Marvel to get involved in that. So I went to Spider-Man. I went to check out Spider-Man stuff.
That was always your go-to Marvel.
Yeah, it was before. Now this is the interesting thing. It's a great way to bring it up because the reason I put Marvel down. The reason I put Spider-Man down was this issue 700, the infamous issue 700. For those who don't know, what they did in issue 700 is they. Doc Ock.
I want to see if I can remember that. Oh, no, it's not.
No.
I was gonna, when was the arrival of Mephisto to reset the universe?
That was just after issue 500. So
okay.
A few years before. That was the around issue 505, I think.
That was Marvel going, this clone stuff's got out of hand.
Oh, that was even before then. No, that was in the 90s. Yeah. Oh, you're talking about the Clone Wars, to reset the Clone Wars, were you not?
Oh, okay, so Mephisto shows up and he removes the marriage between
Mary Jane. Yeah,
I thought that cleaned up some of the clone stuff that had been left over because we'd end up with two Spider-Mans.
Yeah. I'm not sure about that.
Spider-Man. Yeah. This is a conversation for another day.
Yeah, okay, let's try and segue back into it. Yeah, we'll talk about this later. Issue 700, the infamous issue 700, this is what happened. Doc Ock on his deathbed, he's dying, he needs a new body. Somehow tricks Spider-Man, Peter Parker, and takes on Spider-Man's body. So Marvel came up with the idea of, we're gonna just keep telling the Marvel story, the Spider-Man story, but Doc Ock is now going to be in Peter Parker's body, and we're just going to continue on that way, which does some interesting things, such as he's smarter than Peter, so he can be more inventive with the way he fights crime. Because essentially, although it is Doc Ock, he has the sense of guilt and responsibility that Peter Parker brings. So he's kind of affected in that way emotionally. So he's a reluctant Spider-Man, which you get some good stuff. I've read a few of the issues, but I was just like, that's just too crazy for me. I'm not gonna bother. Now, with the Marvel Now stuff that's happened recently, they brought back Peter Parker. Not in a reboot either. They kind of come up with a way to bring Peter Parker back.
Clones.
It's not clones, no, it's not. They have, and that's where the Superior Spider-Man stuff comes in, they have an explosion that happens, which knocks Doc Ock, well, this sounds weird, but I will get onto it, kind of knocks him out of his body, and Peter Parker wakes up as Peter Parker in his own body. And so Amazing Spider-Man issue 1 and onwards, the Marvel Now one.
So it's not a brain transplant, it's some sort of digital brain mind swap.
Some explosion, yeah, exactly. And something's jolted this out, and I'll explain exactly what's happened. So Amazing Spider-Man issue 1, which is not the issue I'm going to talk about, essentially he's now Peter Parker again, but then has to live with all the changes that Doc Ock has made in his life. So Doc Ock has got himself a girlfriend as Peter Parker, he's got himself a doctorate, and he's in charge of all these labs, and Peter Parker's got to kind of stumble through this, because you can't fucking tell people, that's weird, so you kind of got to live through it. It's kind of an interesting idea. The reason I picked up Spider-Man, and it was a perfect way of jumping in, is they're doing a thing called Edge of Spider-Verse, or the Spider-Verse, shall I say. I jumped onto the Edge bit because it's kind of the prelude that I started reading.
Okay.
They're about, in November, they're about to drop into the main Spider-Verse stuff. Now, probably, I don't know, it was a few months ago that they did this Peter Parker coming back thing, and it was this idea of like, well, what has happened to Doc Ock then? What has happened is that explosion has sent him into the future, 2099. So he's like, shit.
Spider-Man 2099.
2099. Spider-Man 2099 is not there, but but Doc Ock is aware of Spider-Man 2099 and aware of where he is in his surroundings. So he's like, shit, I've got to get myself back. So using the technology of the future, he builds himself kind of a portal to get back to his time. So he goes back, and we kind of get a Sliders type situation. He doesn't go back to his realm where Peter Parker's kicking around. He goes to another dimension. Sees Spider-Man.
Marvel and its alternate dimensions.
Yeah, I mean this jumps. I mean Sliders is the best way to describe it. He jumps and he finds a dead Spider-Man. It's like, shit, Peter Parker's dead, with a 5 on his chest. Turns out he's part of the Fantastic Four, who are now the Fantastic Five. So in that universe, he joined the Fantastic Five, and he realised, well, this isn't my timeline, but someone's killed Spider-Man. So then he jumps to another dimension to see if that's his, sliding through the dimensions, and he finds the Civil War Spider-Man. He just keeps jumping through, finding all these dead Spider-Men. So someone's jumping through time, a la the film The One, and killing off all the Spider-Men. So he kind of gets ahead of what's trying to kill him, or kill the Spider-Man, and starts jumping quicker than this mysterious murderer to collect all the Spider-Man up together so they can be a team of Spider-Man to take on this threat.
Oh, cool.
The team that he puts together is great though, because there's some Spider-Man some you don't, and it's kind of this nice lineup.
Because there's been a lot of alternate universe and throwaway Spider-Mans all on the way back. It's probably the character that I can think there's been the most versions of.
And most celebrated as well. Like they get their own computer games and things like that.
I mean, the Shattered Dimensions game sounds like it's got echoes of. This
is what it felt like, and it's a shame that we didn't get Spider-Man 2099. I don't know where he is at the moment, or if he will turn up, because this is going to be an epic run in crossing over all the Spider-Man comics. So it starts off with the Superior Spider-Man, which is the name for the Doc Ock comic. Then it's going to go into Amazing Spider-Man eventually, probably some of the Spider-Girl stuff as well. So it's going to be all over the place. It's going to be covering the Spider comics for a while. So the lineup he has, which is great. He's got Spider-Man India, which I've never heard before. Six-armed Spider-Man. Spider-Man Noir, which is one of my favourites. I love the Spider-Man one. Also, Assassin Spider-Man, which is a darker version of Spider-Man. It's kind of like, because he gets his own this goes over issue 32 and 33. Now, kind of like the PS of 32 is you get to find out a bit of backstory about Assassin Spider-Man, and essentially it is when Gwen Stacy died, he was just like, fuck you, and loads up with guns. And instead of fighting it in the same way Peter Parker does, he's like the Punisher. And he kills and stuff, and it's interesting. So he's and he was trained by Wolverine, is what they do as well. So that's why he's so badass. So you got kind of a gun-toting Spider-Man. You got Spider Girl, the one that I found quite amusing. Spider Monkey, which is I haven't seen what's under the mask, but he's a Spider Monkey in a Spider-Man costume that can talk.
Okay.
And Robo Spider, which is kind of like an android.
Okay.
That shit can happen.
A lot of different Spider-Folk.
Yeah. It's a great comic. Oh wow, it's still has that kind of flatness to it that we talk about the Marvel. I mean, a lot of stuff is going on. Like all of this happened in essentially 1.5 issues, because they kind of get to that team building. The latter half of the second issue is a little bit kind of them just talking and coming up with plans. It's not really worth mentioning, but yeah, and again, it's just that thing of going to the future. Surely that's a couple of issues in itself, rather than just a couple of pages. It's that kind of, we'll run before we can walk. I do like the idea that the explosion that set off the Amazing Spider-Man run that was rebooted recently was also the crux of what started this storyline. So it's a nice little tie in there. Cool. Because like I said, we were talking about the original Sin storyline that we're not really following in Marvel. It was nice to kind of be like, well, this is an event that Marvel are doing, which I can I can get on with. Yeah, and to be fair, like I said, it is a bit flat. The story, at least it's going somewhere, and I'm re-educating in a character that I love, that I've left alone for many years. But I just found myself so many times I love the way that Spider-Man looks when he's drawn. There's so many pages of like, oh my god, that, you know, and it's this really nice way of like, depending on which Spider-Man it is, depends on how you draw him. There's slight differences the way that Doc Ock's Spider-Man suit looks different to Peter Parker's. Like the eyes are kind of like almost fly eyes that kind of come out a little bit, and his spider's slightly different. So every time I get a splash page, or there's a great splash page of him like on one of the buildings in the future, kind of looking up, kind of animal-like, and I forgot how visually interesting that character is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like we talk quite a bit about how many different ways you can draw Batman, like how many poses there are with that cape, and how many different things you can do. With Spider-Man, it's his athleticism.
Yeah.
So it's the poses he can get into, and for it to look natural, it is fantastic. I mean, they even do a pretty good job in the films.
Yeah. And the great thing is that we've got like a dozen Spider-Man in this comic now, so you can get to see them all in different poses. They're slightly different costumes, the way they're redesigned.
Spider-Man is one of my favourite characters to watch fight in a comic.
Yeah.
Because of that, you know, again, that athleticism, sticking the walls, webbing stuff towards him. You never see the same fight twice with the Spider-Man.
No. And there must be a lot of joy when it comes to it's choreographing the right way.
I suppose so. It is still choreographed. You are, even if no one's actually in the end actually doing it, you are choreographing.
Because I imagine only so many times I can show the Punisher shooting someone, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or Arrow shooting, because I know they have that problem on the TV show, or it feels like they have that problem where it's like, how do we do a set piece on the Arrow TV show? Because it's just like we've seen them kneecap someone with an arrow, but you never have that problem with Spider-Man because it's infinite amount of ways that you can fight someone, depending on the surrounding setting. Yeah, it's a lot of fun with that character. So yeah, this isn't still as it's put my faith back into Marvel. It's like, okay, they are doing something. This is kind of, it's not as smart as, like I said, the DC stuff, or I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just because the character's more interesting. That is what this is missing, I must say, because this is Superior Spider-Man. We're still filling Doc Ock. We don't really get enough Peter. Like, we get Peter from different universes, but they're not the Peter Parker we know and love. So this story is desperately missing it. It feels, sorry we keep drawing this back to Batman, but it feels like when Dick Grayson took over as Batman. We loved it because we loved Grayson, but it wasn't Bruce.
I want my Bruce back.
Yeah, I want my Batman back. And I do have this thing, and it might, because like I said, I'm going to try and follow this Edge of Spider-Man or Spider-Verse through the comics, so I will eventually pick up Amazing Spider-Man, so I will get there with our Peter Parker, and it might keep me on that run. We'll see. So it's kind of a little bit of new ground for us, and I'll keep us updated.
Yeah, cool, fantastic. It's great to hear about something because we're almost everything we picked up started at issue 1. So it's great to hear that with Marvel you can still pick it up in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously was clever about it because I knew that this particular run was starting. But yeah,
right.
We're gonna
as we said, news is a big element today. Hey Longboxers, Dan here, just jumping in to let you know we're actually going to leave it there for this week. We had so much news to get through that it didn't make sense to squeeze it all down into one episode. So make sure you look for another episode dropping shortly after this one with all that news, including the interview with our guest Lydia. In the meantime, thanks very much for listening. Read more comics.